Please remain standing. May I now request Miriam Umpire from the Ministry of Trade to come. She will be praying for us and dedicating this day and launch to the Almighty God. Thank you, Mary.
Let us pray as we are. We thank you, Lord, for this day. We thank you that we are launching our industrialization policy. We pray that you will guide us and provide for us as we implement it. And we pray that as we believe, it will offer and create jobs and more wealth for our country. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord, we have prayed.
Please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Our chief guest, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda, our Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, the Honorable Amelia Chambade, the Resident Representative UNDP Uganda, Ms. Elsie Atafwa, His Excellency the Turkish Ambassador to Uganda, His Excellency Fikret Kerim Alp, the Permanent Secretary Minister of Trade, the various heads of government agencies represented here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for this launch of the National Industrial Policy 2020 by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives in partnership with the United Nations Development Programme. So we want to welcome you all, ladies and gentlemen. We also want in a very special way to recognize those of you who are joining us via Zoom and also those of you watching us across the country on the various media platforms that are broadcasting this live, UBC and NBS. Ladies and gentlemen, I take the pleasure to invite the Resident Representative, UNDP, Ms. Elsie, to give her statement by UNDP on promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization. You're most welcome, Elsie.
The Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda, Right Honorable Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, Honorable Amelia Chambade, Honorable Ministers present here, Honorable Members of Parliament, local government leaders, Your Excellencies, the ambassadors from the Diplomatic Corps, and I especially want to also recognize the Ambassador of Turkey, my colleagues from the United Nations system in Uganda, industrialists and representatives of the private sector, the academia, civil society, religious leaders, the media, distinguished participants. Let me simply say, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocols observed. Good morning to you all. Good morning to you all. Great. On behalf of the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, and indeed our wider United Nations family, to National Industrial Policy and the Implementation Plan, thank you all for joining physically as well as virtually. I wish to thank the government of Uganda for championing the policy development process with a special tribute to you, Right Honorable Prime Minister, and the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. I wish to appreciate the leadership of Honorable Amelia Chambade for leading this process. The United Nations, please, a round of applause. The United Nations Development Programme is gratified to be associated with the National Industrial Policy and the Implementation Plan, having partnered with the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives on this important work. This process began in November 2017 with high-level dialogues and was followed by nationwide consultations. Here we are now, launching the National Industrial Policy to guide Uganda's industrialization drive during the third National Development Plan. Right Honorable Prime Minister, let me now shift my attention to providing some context for today's discussion. Why is industrialization important for Uganda today? Industrialization is the key for economic transformation, export revenues, job creation, poverty eradication, and rapid and sustained prosperity in developing countries like Uganda. All this in turn contribute to inclusive growth, resilience, increased living standards, and transformation of the economy and society. In addition to enhanced transformation and resilience, industrialization can also bring the much-needed foreign direct investment and new technologies, as well as foster innovation and international competitiveness. From manufacturing and the private sector point of view, industrialization is an important foundation for entrepreneurship, business investment, technological progress, the upgrading of skills, and sustained productivity improvements. The Asian development experience, for example, shows that industrialization can produce strategic and long-term benefits to nations. Manufacturing shifted labor from low productivity agricultural sector into high productivity manufacturing sector. Manufacturing contributed to rapid foreign direct investment flows, improved innovation, and created strong and internationally competitive economies. Manufacturing also contributed to acceleration of exports, surplus in external trade, and improved balance of payments conditions. There are many lessons for Uganda in terms of the strategic shifts the country needs to make through industrialization to realize the country's national development aspirations. Yes, manufacturing is important and is the way to go, but agro-industry remains strategic for Uganda in the short to medium term. I am glad the national industrial policy strikes a balance in this regard. And having discussed why industrialization is important for Uganda, why is it even more important in the post-COVID era? Right, Honorable Prime Minister? Before the COVID-19 hit Uganda in March 2020, the economy was on an impressive growth path. Gross domestic product growth was at 6.5% in financial year 2018-2019. Industry was the main driver of this growth, expanding at 10.8%, followed by agriculture 5% and services 4.9%. When COVID-19 hit, an estimated 1.9 million people fell back into poverty within the first 2 months of lockdown. The tourism sector grounded to a halt and may potentially lose about $5 billion in the medium term. Up to 60% micro, small, and medium enterprises are also facing business closure. All these will undermine the progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, especially goal number 1 on poverty, goal number 8 on jobs and growth, and goal number 10 on inequalities. The COVID-19 also hit manufacturing in Uganda, especially agro-industries, in terms of jobs and livelihoods. Yet we also know that manufacturing and increased value addition play a crucial role in recovery from COVID-19. We must therefore make the right strategic choices as we invest in building forward better through greener and more resilient industries. In addition, COVID-19 has also exposed certain realities as a number of countries, particularly in the developed countries, began to look more internal to themselves, focusing on their own recovery and their own national and human security. And a clear case is what we are witnessing today on vaccines. Therefore, regional markets are likely to become more crucial in the pursuit of export-oriented industrialization in Uganda and many African countries. In this context, increasing intra-Africa trade through regional value chains will provide Uganda manufacturing firms with economies of scale by tapping into the 1.2 billion African market, whilst concurrently building linkages to the global value chains. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is an opportunity that Uganda must not miss. We must harness regional markets. Thank you. Uganda has done well to swiftly finalize and launch this national industrialization policy and implementation plan to seize the rising opportunities in manufacturing and industrialization across a variety of sectors. Likewise, Uganda needs to move quickly to prepare a national implementation strategy for the African Continental Free Trade Area. I'm pleased to commit UNDP support to the government in this regard. Right Honorable Prime Minister, how can we accelerate progress towards Vision 2040? How can we make this national policy and the implementation plan work? Please allow me to suggest a few things. First, we must ensure this is implemented within the context of the third National Development Plan for 2021-2025, which has prioritized industrialization and provides a whole of government and whole of society framework through several program implementation action plans, popularly known as PIAPs, to deliver integrated action to push the industrialization agenda forward. Some of the notable programs, and I'm glad our colleagues in NPA are here, are on agro-industry, mineral value addition, manufacturing, private sector development, digital transformation, innovation and technology transfer, and many more. Second, with enabling frameworks in place now, the critical test will be working in a coordinated way. Policy coordination and engagement will be key. The implementation of the national policy on industrialization and the strategic plan require coherent action by government, private sector, civil society, and development partners as a whole. Third, business-to-business linkages will be critical for growing Uganda's industrial base. There is need to provide the right signals, incentives for large companies to partner with small and medium enterprises and farmers to promote exports to regional and international markets. Also, the public-private partnership, especially on infrastructure development, is critical for successful industrialization and economic transformation. The success of any industrial strategy relies on the development of competitive private firms that can continue to innovate and raise productivity over time. In South Korea, for example, this was achieved through effective conditions imposed on firms in exchange for government support, including, crucially, the ability to export. Finally, we need to consider important enablers for industrialization, such as skilled labor, digital technology, a strong science, technology, and innovation ecosystem. In line with this, there is urgent need for effective collaboration and partnership between academia, the government, and private sector to boost skilling, digitalization, and innovation. I'm pleased to know that UNDP's Accelerator Lab is actively engaging with government, private sector, civil society to promote innovation and enterprise in the way we manage complex development challenges, but importantly, finding development solutions. UNDP's new Digitalization Innovation Smart Cities program, we call it DISC, will contribute to NDP 3 goals with a focus on strengthening the national innovation and startup ecosystem and accelerate digital transformation. Right, Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, we are faced with a challenging landscape with complex development challenges, prompted not only by COVID-19 pandemic, but also by climate change. Indeed, business as usual approaches to development can no longer work. We need bold actions, stronger partnerships, and innovation to build an inclusive, resilient, and sustainable future that leaves no one behind, that leaves the 190 behind. We should not leave anybody behind. Our business and market-based solutions through industrialization should drive inclusion and provide opportunities for women, young people. We have the second youngest population on earth, and vulnerable groups in Uganda. We must be able and truly lift people out of poverty, create wealth, and promote sustainable development. This policy and strategic plan are a step in the right direction, but this launch cannot be the end of the story. The popularization of the two documents across the country among stakeholders and the ability of government to leverage the opportunities these instruments bring would be key. The whole of government approach in implementing this policy and associated strategy, along with related NDP 3 programs and upcoming strategy on the African continental free trade area, is essential. As I conclude, I would like to say that UNDP and indeed our wider United Nations family are committed to support the government of Uganda in delivering the Uganda we want, generating new employment opportunities for youth, and strengthening value chains, linking industry and trade through domestic trade and regional integration. Congratulations to all of us upon the successful launch or the upcoming launch of the National Industrial Policy, and I want to thank you very much for your attention.
Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Ms. Elsie Atafua. Right Honorable Prime Minister, earlier I had mentioned that Ms. Elsie seems to have been born in Uganda, but seconded to West Africa for studies. She loves this country with a lot of passion. A few days after she just arrived, she traveled to Fort Portal. And I think it was quite strategic that Uganda Tourism Board picked someone who hadn't seen this beautiful country and rushed her to Fort Portal. I think that was to make the first impression on her, and it has stayed on her. And she loves this country. We want to thank you, Elsie, for loving Uganda and being a friend of Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think I have the powers to invite the minister, so I'll ask the PS, please come. PS, come and officially invite the minister to make her remarks.
Right Honorable Prime Minister, all protocol observed. I now have the honor to invite the Honorable Minister for Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, Honorable Amelia Chambade, to make her remarks. Honorable Minister, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Right, Honorable Prime Minister, we're humbled to have you here. Thank you very much for gracing our function today. A big clap for him. Members of the Committee, of Parliamentary Committee of Tourism, Trade and Industry, members of Parliament, if any, Permanent Secretary, Your Excellency, the Resident Rep, UNDP, Madame Elsie Atafua, members of the Diplomatic Corps, development partners all gathered here, members of the private sector, government officials, especially I would like to recognize Ministry of Trade for the struggle they went through, the harassment, the abuses from me, but I'm glad we are here today. Members of the academia, media fraternity, you're always there with us, and thank you for spreading the word. All protocol observed. Emotionally, I'm very excited about this. I've been preparing and waiting for this day. I've written speeches and toned them, so I don't know whether I'll make a good job today. Because emotionally, I'm very excited. It is something we've been waiting for some years now. It's about 3 years. And every morning I'll call someone called Agaba. Commissioner Agaba, can you stand up for recognition? I started with him. He was the commissioner for industry. I harassed him and unfortunately had to leave. Not because of harassment, but because of retirement. And then I said, oh, there goes the industrial policy. But apparently he has a very powerful team. Dennis, can you stand up for recognition with your team? Can you stand up, please? I want to thank this powerful team, yes, for having made this day, because we are here because of them. Thank you so much for this. I want to thank all of you for honoring our invitation. Thank you for participating in the launching of the National Industrial Policy 2020 and its strategic plan. I want to thank UNDP, my sister. Of the UNDP, she's been very, very supportive throughout. From day one it was UNIDO. I recognize UNIDO as well. UNDP has brought us up to this level. I recognize you. Thank you so much, and your team. UNIDO, thank you so much as well for starting off with us. Thank you so much. Globally, we talk about industrialization. Industrialization is the engine for development through the production and consumption of high value-added products and services. According to World Bank statistics of 2018, the contribution of industry to the world production was 25.4%, and the manufacturing value added as a percentage of GDP was 15.4%. The share of manufactured products to total merchandise exports globally stood at approximately 22%. But in Africa, we must now demystify the word industrialization. When we talk about industrialization, sometimes we think it is only foreign groups that have to come in and industrialize. You can become an industrialist. You who seated here today, you have the potential to become an industrialist. The farmer who's in the village, who's in my village, has the potential to become an industrialist. But in most cases, we say, oh, FDIs, let's look for FDIs. Oh, I think I have an investor here. You are an investor. Who can industrialize? You have the potential. Look at other sectors around you. Look at tourism. Tourism as an industry, how many products does it have? Services industry, hospitality industry. What doesn't it have? Oh, those are industries around you. But we sit here and wait for the industrialists. Who is supposed to be Patel? Who's supposed to be Chongpeng? Who's supposed to be any other? Why not you? Today is the day when you should stand up and industrialize your country. And you have the potential. And in most cases, we sit and cry about finances. Yes, finances are there, but your capital is your head. If I want to industrialize, I can't wait for for money to come in first. Let me have my plan first in my head. Look at the raw materials around me. We have all these materials around us. And when we stand here and sing the national anthem, we talk about the potential we have in our countries. Not only Uganda, in Ghana, in Ethiopia, in Africa. And then we think that industrialists must come from Germany, must come from China, must come from India. Let us change our way of thinking, of doing things, of being practical, of planning. How can you import a needle from India? Can't you make that needle here? A nail, paper. I'd like to recognize our ED of URI, Uganda Industrial Research Institute, because he has made the machines for us. But we leave the machines there, and we go and we cry that we can't become industrialists. So the time is now. And today, from today, you're an industrialist. Uganda's industrial sector is comprised of manufacturing, construction, mining, and utilities. And the sector has grown significantly since 1986, with the industry contribution to GDP rising from 11% in 1989-90 to 27.1% in 2018-19. Really? 27.1% when we have all the potential and we celebrate? We should not celebrate. It should be more than 27.1%. But what's that? Manufacturing is currently the largest component of the industry sector, contributing 57.2% of the industrial sector output in 2018-19. The number of manufacturing enterprises has also grown from about 83 in 1986 to 5,200 in June 2020. That is growth, but it should have trebled. But with the national industrial policy, there's going to be a change. The policy focuses on addressing the gaps identified in the National Industrial Policy of 2008 and puts in place strategic measures to optimally benefit from the emerging opportunities. For example, in COMESA, in African Continental Free Trade Area. But before we go there, we should also work on our database, information asymmetry. I was trying to go to check through the records to see how many enterprises or how many industries other countries have. Getting the right data is a problem. Why? Because of the informal industry. People start businesses informally. They don't register them. They are manufacturing a few things in their gardens. They are manufacturing a few things in their garages. And you never get to know. The informal industry is growing. What are we doing about it? That's why we have the National Industrial Policy, to formalize the informal sector. The new National Industrial Policy will address the challenges being faced by the sector, lowering the cost of manufacturing, especially with regard to energy and transport. This is our role. Fortunately, Right Honorable Prime Minister is here, and probably you talk about it. The NRM government has been key in ensuring that we improve on the energy, in ensuring that we improve on the transport. And once we achieve the rail transport, we would have reduced on the cost of doing business, because that has been the biggest challenge. And we are programming it for the new financial year. The cost of energy has been high. When we came in, it was about 22. It came down to 11, and now we hope it will get down to 5 cents. Some industries are enjoying that, and some we're struggling to see that they do. Increasing the range of value-added competitive products to create more employment, as alluded to by the previous speaker, Her Excellency Tafuam, and address the trade imbalance by enhancing import substitution. Lowering the cost of industrial finance, widening the industrial base, and improving integration with agriculture, mineral exploitation, and the domestic natural resources. We are seated here in Serena, talking about this policy. But how does the farmer know about this policy? And how will he ever know that there is an industrial policy? We'll go on the radio, we'll popularize it. Next time when we have these functions, let's go down to the grassroots. Let's go to somebody's farm so that this farmer knows that what I'm doing can be industrialized. I can mechanize my farm. I can produce or add value to what I'm growing. There's a gap. Let us integrate what we are doing with the grassroots communities. They are the farmers. And some of you are farmers here. You are remote farmers. You go over the weekends and do some farming, and they ask you for money for this, for that. You don't even check the gardens. Do you check? But do you think about value addition? You just do it because you enjoy it. So-and-so is doing it, peer influence. My friend so-and-so is doing it, so another one is doing it. Let me also grow matoke. But what are you earning from matoke? You are doing it for your workers. You don't even know how many bunches are there. Next time you go back, they've eaten all of them. They've sold. Okay, you're creating jobs, wealth creation, but you who's putting in money, when will you start thinking about industrialization? Yourself. Ask me who's standing here, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. What industry do I have? Okay, I'm trying to do ecotourism, I'm doing fishing, aquaculture, but have I thought about adding value? Cocoa. So it should start with you, not stories that we come here. We come here and make these wonderful speeches. I was going through this speech and I was preparing myself to read it, but am I feeling it? Yes, I'm feeling it. But am I touching you with it? Are you feeling me? Are you feeling the industrialization that I'm talking about? Are you? Great. So addressing the value of the requisite skills for Ugandan industrial workers and unskilled youth. We know the youth are agitating for space because they want skills. They want to know, they want to grow. We have vocational skills, institutions, but I feel that even the institutions that are working on the utilities should start thinking about sensitizing, and it can, for example, banks. Do we have a representative from the bank here? They're not here. They should have got, the whole table here should have been full of bankers. Because we need your money, you need us. And these bankers should teach financial literacy so that people know, how much money do I make? Will I be able to start a small-scale industry or not? Will I qualify for a loan from the bank? You go to the bank says, come with your work plan. They say, for us, we don't deal with agriculture. How big is your farm? What kind of industry? What capital do you have? How much? All the questions. You fill forms and forms. We have to demystify this. Industrialization can start from employment of 5 people, 10 people, to medium or large. Upgrading the technology being used in the industries. Improving efficiency of industrial operations and better resources utilization. The goal of the National Industrial Policy 2020 is to double the manufacturing value, 30, but we should be more ambitious than that. Ambition pays. Dreams pay. You dream, and there's reality, and eventually reality unfolds. Because we start all our plans through visions, through dreams. I didn't know this day would come. Today, this has been my dream, and I'm glad it has unfolded today. We intend to increase the industry sector contribution to GDP from 27.1, 2018-19, to 31.7% in the next 2 years. But we're thinking about the next 2 years when we had not factored in oil and gas. Once we have oil and gas, definitely 31.7% will be too low. And that is if we optimally utilize that oil and gas. So what are the objectives of the policy? Because we always come up with these nice policies. One time I read somewhere, someone said, Ugandans are very good at designing policies, but the challenge is enforcement. Ho ho. A bitter pill to swallow, but it's the truth. But the good thing is that for us, we even have a strategic plan, because once you see someone designing a policy without a plan, question marks. How will he enforce or implement that policy? But I'm proud to announce that we also have a plan attached to our policy. A clap for us. So what are the objectives of this policy? To increase public investment and nurturing of industrial development projects in strategic areas. Increase the supply of quality raw materials for value addition in the sector. Develop and strengthen skilled human resource. Accelerate development, use of research innovations and adoption of appropriate technologies. Promote resource-efficient and environmentally sustainable industrialization. So the government of Uganda, through extensive study and consultation, has identified the specific priority industrial subsectors in the implementation of this policy. And these are, number one, agro-industries. Fruits. Fruits are rotting on the roads. You drivers are going to the north, you find mangoes all over the place. And I keep thinking, can someone come up with a small-scale industry okay, we have Soroti, but we can't keep singing about Soroti Fruit Factory. For how long? Sometimes I'm even embarrassed to talk about these few industries we have. And we have all the brains. Look at the people sitting here. If God was to open these brains, you just see quality seated here. Quality brains that are burning here. But where is your industry? You pass mangoes on the road, rotting. Bananas, these poor women move around with all these bananas every day. And you can't think of an industry to add value to that banana. Oh. Until we retire. And then you retire in peace. They say the man was intelligent. What did he do? He was a public servant. Public servant who is even designing these policies here. And me who's screaming my head off. But hey, there's even no factor, not even small scale. He had no money. You know, these public servants have no money. And you know, they're always crying. You know, for us, we work a lot, but our salaries are too low. But you have that brain. If you can sit and write a paper and a book, a full book like this, why can't you use your hands? Use your brain. They call you somewhere to go and give lectures about industrialization. And people clap, and you walk up empty with your tail between your legs, and you say, hey, by the way, do I have any industry? I can't even employ 2 people, except your housemaid. Now it's time to wake up. I'm sorry I've gone off your speech, but I'm emotionally charged. They're eyeing me. My people are eyeing me. What is she saying? So fruits, coffee, and we export this coffee as it is, and we boast. We have exported so many metric tons of coffee. Why? Tea, cassava, oilseeds, bananas, textile. These are the key areas that we want to focus on. But now, where do you see yourself in some of these categories? Start thinking. The machines are there. They might not be here, but you might importing a machine. You don't even have to pay tax for it. What is it that is keeping you there in poverty? And you're crying, I'm a public servant. You know, for us, the salaries are so low, no fuel, no what. These are all our cries. These are the things we complain about. Grains, sugarcane, cassava. We grow cassava, all of us. Leather products. Then extractive industries, iron and steel. Of course, these are a bit complicated. Cement, oil and gas, plastics, salt, and fertilizers. Then knowledge-based industries, like pharmaceuticals, electrical and electronic products. So what are the expected outcomes of the policy? Increased share of manufactured exports to total exports from 22.5% to 46.8% by 2029. But still, that's modest. Increased industry sector contribution to GDP from 27.1, 31, I said we have to increase that. We should start being ambitious. You know, these targets you set sometimes limit you. It's better to be over-ambitious and you aspire to get there. Instead of saying 31, you say 60. Yes, you have to be ambitious. Increase contribution of manufacturing subsector to GDP from 15.4 to 26. That is also modest. Increase share of jobs from 9.8% in 2008 to 15%. Still, we need to be more ambitious. Increase compliance of manufacturing industries to environmental regulations. Right, Honorable Prime Minister. The formulation of this national industrial policy and strategy involved wide consultations with the private sector, members of the academia, and civil society, MDAs. Academia, they write very good papers. But practically, we need to do something. I've seen professors, we need to start working in tandem. Your capacity here should correlate with the practical side, investment. Their input was invaluable. I thank you, all of you, development partners, MDAs. I therefore trust that we will harness the already demonstrated synergy to ensure the effective implementation of this important policy and strategy. I'd like to take this opportunity again to reiterate my sincere appreciation to all the stakeholders who have played a role in this venture. The successful formulation of the policy and strategy, UNIDO, UNDP, academia, members of the private sector, and most of all, the people who have been battered, again, Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Cooperatives. I'd like to take this on, but before I do, I'd like to conclude. They say every day is a learning curve. As we leave this hall, we should be different from the way we came in here. In whatever sector you're working in, Think about an opportunity that you can access to turn around your life, to turn around your economy, to turn around the economic livelihood of not only you, but the communities around you. Real estate is an industry. Cassava milling is an industry. Simple machinery. Maize milling, basics. But whenever you're looking at that, look at quality. Why are our goods intercepted from entering other countries? Because of the quality and standards. Mediocrity, shoddy work is not the way to go. Excel, and you can make it. Tomorrow you can be the most popular industrialist here. I want to thank you very much for listening to me. I thank you for honoring us and coming here to celebrate with us this wonderful day of launching this policy. A policy that will not only benefit trade, it will benefit you, it will benefit your economy, it will benefit the whole country and Africa as a whole. Right, Honorable Prime Minister? I'm getting a bit excited, but let me just invite you, let me do my work and invite you to address the gathering and to officially launch the National Industrial Policy and Strategy. I thank you all for listening to me. May God bless you. Thank you.
Honorable Amelia Chambade, the Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, other ministers who are here, honorable members of Parliament, Your Excellency, the Resident Representative of UNDP, development partners, members of the private sector, government officials, some of whom have been introduced, members of the academia, and I see quite a few, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to salute Honorable Amelia Chambade for her passionate and clarion call for industrialization. That's what a commander should do. You have done your job. Let's not let her down. I also want to salute the UNDP representative to Uganda for her statement and for her solidarity and full support for industrialization in Uganda. And she has promised continued support, and we have no doubts about that. I am pleased to be here with you at indeed this memorable occasion in which we launch the National Industrial Policy and the National Industrial Sector Strategic Plan. The goal of the National Industrial Policy 2020 is to double the manufacturing value added as a percentage of GDP from 8.3 to 16%, and increase the industrial sector contribution to GDP to 31.7% in the next 10 years. Industrialization is critical for Uganda's structural and socio-economic transformation. The importance of industrialization in economic transformation is underscored by the African Union Agenda 2063 and the Africa we want, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The SDGs, SDG number 9 in particular, focuses on building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and also fostering innovation. Uganda's quest for industrialization is also fully highlighted in Vision 2040 and the 5-year national development plans. The third national development plan prioritizes industrialization as a key driver for Uganda's prosperity in line with Vision 2040. In fact, the overall theme of NDP3 is, and I quote, sustainable industrialization for inclusive growth, employment, and sustainable wealth creation. So what we are launching today is consistent with what our vision is and what our third national development plan is. Since 1989, the National Resistance Movement has been pursuing strategic measures to promote industrial development in the country. And these are some of the measures that have been taken. 1, putting in place its first national industrial policy and a strategic plan, which was in 2008. 2, extending the road network to cover most parts of the country. You need this as a nervous system to ensure that the whole country is connected and is vibrant. 3, increasing the total paved roads as a percentage of total national roads from 8% in 1986, and 8% was only 1,000 kilometers, to 21.1% in 2019, which is 5,500 kilometers. Number 4 is constructing power plants, including the new ones, Isimba and Karoma power plants, to increase the electricity generation. The electricity generation has been climbing, and as of June 2020, it stood at 1,268 megawatts, and the transmission lines covered about 3,000 kilometers. And finally, the commitment to reduce the cost of electricity for manufacturing from the current 8.7 cents to 5 American cents. However, despite these government initiatives to promote industrial development in the country, there still exists bottlenecks that need to be addressed. This was the essence of the review of Uganda's first national industrial policy in 2017, which revealed gaps and emerging issues. This prompted the need to formulate a new policy to guide the management of the emerging challenges and harness emerging opportunities, such as the African Continental Free Trade Area and the fourth industrial revolution technologies. We have been informed that the private sector members and members of the academia, development partners, and the relevant MDAs effectively participated in the formulation of the policy and its implementation strategy. The Honorable Minister for Industry has elaborated on this very point. I applaud you for your critical involvement in the process of the formulation of this critical policy and strategy. The drafting of the National Industrial Policy was coordinated by the Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, the lead ministry responsible for the industrial sector in the country. This is a key milestone in the promotion of industrialization for our country. I therefore thank the PS who is with us here, the Honorable Minister of State, and Honorable Minister and the team partly introduced in her ministry and other stakeholders for a job well done. I take this opportunity that we are engaged in now, the fact that we have got so many stakeholders attending this very meeting, say your presence here clearly demonstrates the seriousness of the different stakeholders and also demonstrates the readiness on your part to enhance the synergies that are brought about by you working together, and also what positive impact it will have in implementation of the new industrial policy. I now take the honor to launch the National Industrial Policy and the National Industrial Sector Strategic Plan. I thank you.
Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. We want to thank you, Right Honorable Prime Minister. Before you sit, we don't want you to sit, Right Honorable Prime Minister. We are going to officially launch by cutting the ribbon and unveiling both the policy and the strategy. So please, Right Honorable Prime Minister, please, supported by the Minister and the resident representative and witnessed by the PS, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, the scissor is there. It has been sanitized, and we'll also sanitize your hands as soon as you've done that. So there you go. All right. So there you go. So you will cut the tape, Right Honorable Prime Minister. 3, 2. We'll cut the tape first. And there you go. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. We'll now unveil the policy. That is the National Industrial Policy, ladies and gentlemen. You will all get a copy very shortly, and you will be leaving with a copy of the National Industrial Policy. We will sanitize your hands and we move to the next stage. Can we get the scissor so the Prime Minister also cuts our strategy? Honorable Amelia, do we have the scissor with you somewhere there? After he has appended his signature. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, the Right Honorable Prime Minister pending his signature on the National Industrial Policy 2020. Thank you very much. The Honorable Amelia, she was wondering whether to write in French or English, but thank you very much, Honorable Minister. You want to have the date? It would also be fine. Elsie? Some background music, sir. We are celebrating. Didn't you hear the Honorable Minister? She's very excited about this. There you go. All right. So, Right Honorable Prime Minister, then we'll cut the strategic plan there. There you go. Now we'll move to the next. Right Honorable Prime Minister, please, we take the honor to request you to humbly cut the tape of the strategic plan. There you go. Thank you very much. Let's unveil the strategic plan. That's the National Industrial Policy Strategic Plan 2021 to 2025, the financial years 2021, 24, 25. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Right Honorable Prime Minister. Please bring the sanitizer. We need to sanitize the Right Honorable Prime Minister. Whoever has our sanitizer there, please. Requested that the panelists, because some of them are heads of different government agencies, please come. The panelists who are joining us, please come. We want to have a photo with the Prime Minister, and then the panelists. The moderator is like me. We are very small people. Please come and join. Yes. Feel free to. So I'll request Elsie, maybe we move forward so we can encourage others. Just move forward, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, so the others can join on the side there. There you go. The tall ones, like my brother, who can see tomorrow, can stand behind. There you go. All right. These will be the panelists very shortly for our panel discussion. And we want in a very special way to thank the Right Honorable Prime Minister for launching the National Industrial Policy 2020. Are we okay, cameraman? All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And Elsie, please, CEO of our Prime Minister. And we will thank you, Right Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much. Please stand by with my video. We will be playing the video that puts in context the industrial policy, and then I'll invite the moderator to come and discuss this policy with his panel, but we'll have the video first as the Honorable Minister and Elsie walk the Prime Minister. All right, video please.
The journey of industrialization development in Uganda dates back to the colonial regime. In 1952, the British government established Uganda Development Corporation to promote industrial development. However, until independence, there was no remarkable industrial development and no policy to guide the industrialization agenda of the country.
Expressing the hope that the city of
In 1986, the total number of manufacturing industries was only 81, and contribution to the manufacturing sector to the gross domestic product, GDP, was only 9.6%. To address the situation, government introduced major economic reforms, such as establishment of the Uganda Investment Authority in 1991 and other initiatives to promote investment in the country.
For the industrial sector to strive in the country, the following interventions have cushioned the economic environment. For example, the favorable institutional and regulatory framework, for example, the National Industrial Policy, the one we've just reviewed, Land Policy, National ICT Policy, UNBS Act, Finance Act, and many others have actually supported the growth of the industrial sector. Infrastructure development is another key enabler that has uplifted and supported the industrial sector.
To realize Uganda's industrialization goals, development partners have played a very crucial role.
We have made strategic partnerships along the way, and they've been very supportive in our journey to achieve whatever we have achieved at the moment. The United Nations Development Organization, UNIDO, which supported the review process of the old industrial policy, while the United Nations Development Program, that is UNDP, funded the process of drafting the new policy that we are launching today.
According to the National Development Plan 3, the private sector is the engine for Uganda's economic growth, generating 77% of formal jobs, contributing 80% of the GDP, funding 60% of all investments, and providing more than 80% of government domestic revenues. The role of the private sector in promoting the country's industrial development cannot, therefore, be underestimated.
The private sector has been critical in the industrial development of Uganda, especially given that if you review the makeup of industry in Uganda, save for a few entities that have been supported by government, but that have been set up by government, for example, Soroti Fruit Factory, among others, the majority of them are private sector enterprises, and they are thriving because of innovation, because of private sector ability to identify opportunities. And this is really in line with what we see as the ideals of the EAC, which is being a private sector-led integration process.
To me, I think it's very important that we provide space both, because I don't think that the government itself can solve this problem, but it's an approach that requires quite a number of stakeholders, the government, development partners, and the private sector itself, to come together and create platforms that will enable these young innovations to showcase what they are doing. And then government also should be able to support these homegrown innovations, because in doing so, they're actually enabling them to become investment ready. And when they are investment ready, they're able to attract huge investments from investors outside there. And then they're able to create local jobs here and sustain our economy in the long run.
In 2008, Uganda developed her first national industrial policy to provide strategic direction for industrialization. In 2017, government, through the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives and partners, led by UNDP, conducted a review process of the policy, and key findings revealed some progress, specifically in institutional development, industry facilitation infrastructure, and public-private partnerships enhancement. However, the industrial sector is still faced with bottlenecks, including, among others, low productivity and capacity utilization, low technology uptake and adoption, high cost of production, and inadequate skilled human resources.
Certainly, there are some gaps hindering industrial development in Uganda. Some of these, I would divide them into two. One would be logistical challenges, and on the logistical challenges, I would speak to the usual issues of cost of power as a key hindrance to industrial growth, because given where we sit in Africa, and given that we're getting into the African Continental Free Trade Area, we are now competing with countries like Egypt, countries like Ethiopia. If you go to Ethiopia, power is often taken at 2.6 cents per kilowatt hour. If you go to Egypt, it's often taken at 5.6 cents per kilowatt hour. If you go to Uganda, we are hovering between 8 and 11 cents per kilowatt hour, which means that our products, vis-a-vis products from some of these markets, are definitely not going to be competitive. The other logistical infrastructure challenge would be cost of credit.
It is against this background that the government of Uganda embarked on a new industrial policy, which will serve as a blueprint for Uganda's industrial transformation over the decade 2020-2030.
The new policy focuses on three strategic value chains, and this includes agro-based industries such as fruits, coffee, cotton, extractive-based manufacturing industries such as iron and steel, oil and gas, and then knowledge-intensive industries such as pharmaceuticals, automobiles, electrical and electronic, as well as product assembling.
Because people say, oh, you people, you're always drafting policies, but how are we benefiting from them? First of all, in regulating these industries. Two, create backward and forward linkages between industries themselves, especially the ones that are processing the same categories, but also have an integrated framework amongst them. If I'm making steel, I should be linked to the housing industry or to another industry so that I can provide building materials for you.
Top of the list of opportunities arising out of the industrial policy is that we've been involved in its development, in the development of the policy, and as such, we've had a chance to participate in the formulation of the policy that affects us as manufacturers. Number two is that I think there is now a tie-in between the industrial policy and the National Development Plan, which was lacking before. This means that the planning side is going to ensure that the plans that are put in place link to the ideals of the industrial policy, which means that achievement of what is captured in there is going to be highly possible.
The policy goal is to increase the manufacturing value added as a percentage of GDP from 8.3% in 2018-2019 to 16% in 2029-2030. The outcomes of the policy will include increased industry sector contribution to GDP from 27.1% in 2018-2019 to 31.7% in 2029-2030. Increased contribution of manufacturing to GDP from 15.4% in 2018-2019 to 26% in 2029-30. Increased ratio of manufactured products exported to total exports from 22.5% in 2018-2019 to 46.8% by 2029-30. Reduced ratio of manufactured products imported to total imports from 63.2% in 2018-2019 to 45% in 2019-30. Increased share of jobs from manufacturing subsector to total formal jobs from 9.8% in 2018-2019 to 15% in 2029-2030.
I'd like to inform the public that the journey to Uganda's attainment of a middle income status is highly dependent on industrial development. The NDP National Development Plan 3 positions industrialization as the driving factor for the prosperity of Ugandans. I appeal for continued partnerships between government, development partners, the private sector, the academia, the media, and civil society in promoting the industrialization agenda of the country.
All right. Thank you very much to the team that put this together. I want to invite the PS to recognize some people.
Yeah, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard about the journey that has brought us today here, culminating into the launch of the National Industrial Policy together with its strategy. I would like to recognize Engineer Samuel Senkungu. Engineer Samuel Senkungu, are you here? Please stand up for recognition. Engineer Senkungu was the Director, Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, and he spearheaded the process of the development of this policy. Is Engineer Senkungu in? Secondly, would like to also recognize Engineer Peter Balimunsi, who was the Commissioner for Industry. He retired. Engineer Balimunsi was part of the team. Commissioner Gaba Raymond, who was then Commissioner Internal Trade. And we'd also like to recognize Msingi East Africa, who are attending online from Nairobi, specifically Ms. Antoinette Tesha, Mr. Abraham. They are currently working with us to develop the cotton textile apparel strategy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, PS. It's really important when you must recognize partners who walk with you this journey. And as the minister was, celebrating the launch of this policy, she did mention some of the partners. And in a very special way, we want to thank all the partners. Now, before I invite our moderator to invite his panel, I also want to recognize the agencies that are here. I had recognized UDC that are here, but also NPA, the National Planning Authority that is represented here. We want to thank you so much for driving this national agenda. And now that we are in my space, we are discussing digital transformation program. Thank you very much. It would not be right to recognize you here. And they've also recognized Msingi East Africa. They are joining us on Zoom, so I want to thank you for being with us. I take the pleasure now to invite my brother, lecturer at Makerere University Business School, Ramadan Ngobi, who's the moderator for this panel, to come and first of all invite his panelists and then take us into this panel. We've shrunk the time so we are able to fit within the time frame. But please don't leave, because if Ramadan is fasting, so he may not be able to tell you there is lunch after the panel discussion. So I know Ramadan won't announce it because he won't have the lunch with us. But for those of you who are not fasting, please join us for lunch. But that will be immediately after the panel and the vote of thanks. Over to you, Ramadan. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Maurice, for also that session you have conducted very well, as usual. A round of applause to Maurice. The Honorable Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, Honorable Maria Chambade, Honorable Members of Parliament who could be present today, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, the resident representative of UNDP in Uganda, and all of you distinguished ladies and gentlemen, protocols observed. I think it is still a very good morning. We are going to have now the next session, which is going to discuss some of the aspects within this national policy on industry, a policy many of us have been waiting for. So it was understandable when I saw the Honorable Minister very emotional this morning for this. And congratulations to the ministry for bringing out 2 big documents on the same day. Some of us who understand the industrial policy aspects, really you can't develop a country without the blueprint. Some people sometimes ask, are we going to eat papers? You have so many papers, but they are the guiding principles. I have a panel, and I'm going to invite them in no particular order, and we shall be quite precise in answering my questions. Thank you. Because as they've told you, we have lunch. We were supposed to have lunch. And also I have Tuganda Ikuku Mine, which I will have later. Mr. Dennis Ainebiona is the Commissioner for Industry and Technology in the ministry. Please give him a round of applause as he comes. He's been the chief cook of this policy and its relative, the strategy. Dr. Patrick Birungi, you can choose anywhere you want. Dr. Patrick Birungi is the Executive Director of Uganda Development Corporation, the investment arm of government. Give him a round of applause. He also spent some time at NPA, at the National Planning Authority, and he was in charge of development planning for 9 years. He's the one who developed National Development Plan 1 and NDP 2. And now he's implementing them at UDC. You are welcome. We also have Miss Veronica Namwanje Kavuma. Do I have Miss Kavuma? Miss Veronica Namwanje is a business executive, an economist, and an entrepreneur, and she's working as the ED of Uganda Small Scale Industries Association, a very, very critical. Give him a very big round of applause. Most of our industry here is under her docket. When you look at data, they are the ones who are producing most of the things that the Honorable Minister and the Prime Minister we are talking about. You are welcome, Madam Veronica. I also have Mr. Samuel Edem Maitum, who's the Director Credit at Uganda Development Bank. He's representing the ED on our panel. Samuel is a seasoned risk management professional who has worked in the development banking environment for over 17 years. You are welcome, Samuel, and we shall need to know from you how we are going to finance and fund this policy. And I also have Mr. Daniel Birungi. Danny Birungi, I saw you. Daniel Birungi is the Executive Director at Uganda Manufacturers Association. Give him a round of applause. And as you know, UMA, they are the coordinators of industrialists in this country. They are the ones who bring their voice to the government and other stakeholders to ensure that the sector performs well. Lastly, but not least, I have Dr. Tangavo Paranivo, who is the Senior Economic Advisor at UNDP. I hope I've pronounced your very exotic name very well. And he has been also worked in New York, advising also the UNDP office there. He has also worked as a senior strategic advisor to the chief economist at the UNDP Regional Bureau for Asia Pacific in New York as well. So this is the panel, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have this morning to look through some of the aspects in our policy and see how we are going to implement them. I'm going to start with the cook, and I will prefer actually to stand here than to sit there, because I would want to watch each face as they are giving us quite precise answers. Dennis Ainebiona, the commissioner in charge of industry and technology at the ministry. First of all, as a softball, tell the Ugandans why the National Industrial Policy 2020. Why do we need this policy? And what are the key lessons do we learn from the policy of 2008, which you carry forward in this one to ensure that we have our industrialization agenda well anchored? First, why the policy? Then, what lessons did you pick from the old one?
Yes, thank you, moderator. As the cook, let me start by thanking all of you again who have moved with us and are here with us today. Again, without diverting, allow me to thank my minister who has been leading us and the other ministers who are not here, my permanent secretary, and the team I work with, but also UNDP, who came in handy to support us. Back to the question, why do we need the national? It is a blueprint. It provides the direction for the next 10 years on how we develop, we strengthen the industrial sector. It looks at the issues that need to be addressed. And for this one, which we're specifically looking at, the one of 2020, it is the second version. The first one, we had it in 2008, and we implemented it up to 2017. And after that, we went under the review process, and basically, we are trying to assess ourselves how we had moved. And of course, we could not do this alone. Again, we engaged all of you stakeholders, and you were able to give us your views, which we really considered. The lessons, Mr. Moderator, we got or we learned from implementation of the previous policy. It came out clearly that, yes, we've been saying the private sector, and indeed it still remains the engine of growth. But for industrial sector, it came out clearly that there was need to increase or to enhance the role of the state in supporting industrial development. Not to say that the state was not doing it, but to really increase. And to this, we are looking at strengthening the institutions that support industrial development. And for this case, we start with Uganda Development Corporation, which was also one of our success stories, because when we started implementing, we had not revived UDC, and we were able to put it in place. But we are seeing going forward, UDC being an investment arm for government, for economic development and industrial development, that needs to be enhanced.
Okay.
We are also looking at, from the side of government, strengthen the institution and support research and innovations. We are also looking at strengthening UDB. Should be further recapitalized. How do we have the funds to support the industrial development? Yes, my minister, indeed, she has said all of us have the knowledge. We also have some little resources, but there is need to have the funds to be able to support, to get the right technologies, to be able to get the right experts, and to be able to really produce products that match the demands of the market. The role of the state, again, is also to ensure that the markets really work better and they are very efficient, and we really think that should be enhanced. And when you look at the strategic interventions we have put across, and the biggest chunk of money is at strengthening the institutions within the government. Mr. Moderator, another lesson we picked from implementing the previous policy was the need to be specific or to bring clarity. If we are talking of export promotion, if we are talking of import substitution, which value chains, which commodities are you looking at to add value and be able to take it to be able to take it to the markets? And so for this case, we have prioritized the industries. But we're also saying, when you look at the composition of our industrial sector, the biggest percentage are MSMEs. But should you focus on SMEs and leave the large enterprises? We are saying we should have a mix. And this is how we have put forward.
Did you, in a quick one, maybe in a minute or two, the audience and the public would like to know, did you learn any lessons on implementation discipline? Because as the Honorable Minister said, the challenge hasn't been writing the policy. In the one of 2008, actually, when we studied it, we found that only 30% was implemented. What particular lessons did you learn on implementation discipline that you are carrying to this particular one?
Thank you. The big lesson we we pick is that, one, we should be able to move from working in isolation and work together as a government. The industrial policy, it is a national industrial policy. It is not for Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives alone. It's for the entire government. And therefore, we really need to work together. Even under the 2008, it had been envisaged that there was need to have an interministerial coordination forum, but it didn't happen. So we've really picked it, and also through working with the National Development Plan, with the National Planning Authority under the NDP3, we've put up a committee under the manufacturing program, which we are leading, and we really think this is going to turn things around. We must be able to plan the implementation together and be able to review progress.
Great.
And it is structured under different levels. At the apex, we have the cabinet. It's going to be an interministerial subcommittee, which will be chaired by the minister responsible for industry. And we think this will be able to turn things around, and maybe after 2026, the story will be different.
Super, super. I will come now to the gentleman who's heading the institution that is mandated. Dr. Birungi, Ugandans need results. How, first of all, first tell us, I'll also start on a slow pace. I wouldn't want to bombard you with a big one. What's the role the UDC is going to play?
On a high note. And I chose my words very carefully this term because I believe we may have many more terms. And also to UNDP for supporting the right cause. First of all, if we talk about UDC, UDC is formed for the sole purpose of industrializing this country and socio-economic transformation. And that's what the UDC Act is all about. When it comes to the role, specifically to respond to your question, UDC's role is basically to intervene in key strategic areas where we feel the private sector has not moved as fast. Our role is to go in, de-risk those areas, and allow private sector to take root. Our role is catalytic. It's not meant to go in and stay in there. I'll just give an example. With the intervention in Soroti, with Soroti Fruit Factory, today we are attracting many people willing to invest in Soroti Fruit Factory, but also 2 different private sector initiatives are already taking lead to implement fruit processing facilities in the same region. To me, that's the catalytic role that the government plays in this whole agenda, not necessarily to go in and be big players all the time, but allow the private sector to take root. And that's the role we want to play through the implementation of this policy. And when you look at the UDC strategic plan and the policy, we fit very well in the policy in terms of the strategic areas, whether it's agro-processing as highlighted in the policy, that is our core entry point at the moment, or whether it is with the, what they call extractive industry. On our side in the strategic plan, we have mineral beneficiation. So basically, we are in line with the agenda as the policy defines, and we'll continue to play our catalytic role in agro-industrialization and also in the mineral beneficiation space. We'll also, when you look at the core principles within the policy, utilization of local raw materials, job creation, improving trade balance position, developing local entrepreneurship and so on, are also in line with our key principles as Uganda Development Corporation. So we'll go ahead and implement the policy and support the implementation of the policy in specific areas, whether it's coffee processing as highlighted, we already have interventions in that area. Whether it's tea processing, we already have interventions in that area. Fruit processing, we go ahead and in grain processing, cotton, and so on and so forth.
In particular, I would like you to update Ugandans on the situation at Soroti Fruit Factory, because that factory has been in the media and everywhere so much. Bring us to book on how to speed on how this factory in particular is performing, but specifically the lessons you are learning from there.
The industrial policy, I saw at the back, the Teju brand as well. So there is the Teju brand on the market.
I wish you brought some here and people had a taste.
It's fast peaking in the market. Our challenge now is to deal with our competitors because it's fast eating into their market share.
Oh. So you are worried of the competitors' survival?
Survival.
Okay.
So our process is now moving. We need to strengthen it a little more. When we started, we realized that we could consume only about 10% of the fruits in that region during a good fruiting season, meaning that you can interest the private sector. And we've managed to do that because now 2 factories are coming up in the Soroti Industrial Park, both of them for processing fruits. But we have also got private sector inquiries on how they can partner with us to improve our factory. We have an expansion plan, but we also have a plan to address the other emerging industries around the fruit processing. So it is quite interesting. In terms of learning, we've learned a lot that doing business in a public sector setting is quite a challenge. Sometimes you have to go and get accreditation from PPDA for you to buy fruits from farmers. So these kind of processes sometimes delay the speed at which you want to move, but at the same time you have to fulfill both the public sector requirements and the private sector needs. You have to advertise if you want to buy inputs to the industry. And it's possible your competitor will just buy all the sugar, industrial sugar out, and you have, by the time you finish your procurement process, you will have no sugar to buy. So,
what do you think should be the way forward on that?
The way forward on this is really, we are not saying that we shouldn't be under a regulated environment, but we should have special guidelines within the PPD Act, for example, for public enterprises. That will help ease a lot of these needs. If not, we need a special law. Like our neighbors in Kenya, they have a special law for the public enterprises. So these are some of the challenges that we find. Also, the speed of financing from government systems through the budgets and so on. Sometimes it slows the process a little. But I think by and large, the facility is up and running. It may still be having a few challenges, but those will be corrected as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. I will come to Daniel Birungi, the Executive Director for UMA, the Uganda Manufacturers Association. First of all, Daniel, Uganda runs a policy of private sector led. In everything, private sector is leading. Did you play a role in the formulation of this policy? Did you feel that you played a role, and what role was that in particular? And also in the same bit, after you've told us the role, how do you think this policy is going to help you as private sector to harness value addition in particular and inclusive growth in general?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And first of all, just in line with what everyone has said, I think hearty congratulations are due to the ministry and the Honorable Minister for a job well done in delivering this. And I'm one of those who believe the runway for takeoff was set when the Honorable Minister and her team insisted on Bubu as a starting point. Because with Bubu, we've set the first steps to implementing the industrial policy and strategy, and I believe we can only go further with this. To your question, what role did we play? I must say we are very grateful that this time we did play a very strong role in the development of this policy. We were not only consulted, but we were part of the teams that were reviewing the documents. We did review the performance of the previous policy and the weaknesses therein, and provided significant input into determining what to focus on as we move forward. If you've paid critical attention to the targets that have been set, several of them are manufacturing specific, which is testament to the fact that we were part of the process, and we would like to thank the ministry and indeed the team in industry for ensuring that this happened. As far as what benefits do we see accruing from the policy as we move forward, I think one of the key positives around this policy and its attendant strategy is that there is a linkage between the policy and the National Development Plan. Because as government has moved to program-based budgeting, there is definitely supposed to be that link, because then that's what ensures funding for the policy implementation process. And that is a first step that is a mark in the right direction. Two is that the focus on agro-industrialization speaks to the economy as is, that 68% of our citizens are actively engaged in agriculture, and that therefore, as we take charge of an industrial policy that speaks to agro-industrialization, we are touching the lives of the many citizens out there who would otherwise not have a chance to play in the economy that we are in. Third, of course, is that the focus on mineral beneficiation speaks to our export statistics. That as we speak today, you know that gold is up there as one of our biggest exports. But the question is, are we retaining most of the value of this gold we export in Uganda? And this has to be cascaded down. We talk about the iron ore that we have in Moko right now, that we've left in the ground. And this policy then provides the stimulus and the impetus for private sector to then say, wait a minute, there are opportunities here that are untapped that we can take advantage of. So as far as we are concerned, I think the ground is set. Like the English say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The table is set. Now it's time to eat. And as a manufacturers association, we are ready to eat. And we've been hungry for a long time.
Great.
Yes.
You can see the minister is leading in the applause. You are speaking music to our ears. Now, quickly, what do you think should be your role in the implementation process? And how do you intend to harness this policy to ensure that we upscale industry in the country?
Our role starts with, has started with being part of the preparation stage, which is good. And right now, we are actively working with the Ministry of Trade in terms of ensuring that the programs that are developed for the financial year are speaking to what manufacturers need, are speaking to what is necessary for industry to grow. So that's the first step, that we are part of the planning process of the ministry, and we've had a seat at the table in this regard. The program-based budgeting has been useful in also helping us understand where we can play and what role we can play.
In addition to that, the ministry has not only talked the talk, but has walked the talk, because as I speak today, we have a seat on the boards of several of the institutions that are responsible for implementation of this policy. We've gotten a seat on the board of the Uganda National Bureau of Standards, which is critical in terms of standardization. We are in advanced stages of getting on the board of the Uganda Development Corporation, because they speak to what our mandate is. And we are also have a seat on the board of the Uganda Export Promotions Board. And I believe this is the way to go, because if a policy is speaking to manufacturing, industrialization, the people involved in these processes have to have a seat at the table in terms of planning and in terms of monitoring implementation of the plans.
Markets being your biggest problem, do you have also a seat on the board of the export promotions?
Yes, we do. We do have a seat on the board of the export promotions, and we are using it effectively.
Fantastic. Yes. I will go to Veronica, the only lady on the panel. And I don't know, you know, industry tends to be, I think so, Manel in nature. And I have only one lady, but she's right in the center and steadfast. Veronica, at USIA, you have, of course, been promoting the heart and the heartbeat of Uganda's industry. It is in the SMEs. 93% of our farms in Uganda are SMEs. How do you think you are going to position this USIA to ensure that this plan, this policy, the National Industrial Policy, that we are deeply informal, the SMEs, and we need to formalize. What do you think this policy should do to support you, to formalize?
We also are thinking that more people will be agreeable to be part of it. Even the application of the National Supplier Database is another thing that has come up to kind of bring more people to formalize their business, because everybody wants to be part of the oil and gas and get profit from it.
Thank you. I'll keep you a bit neutralized for now. And I come to Dr. Tangave. Doctor, you are the advisor in chief of the UNDP on matters like this. And you know, in Uganda, we are having now, Africa generally, a challenge of changing the structure of our economies. We are economies. We are exceedingly agrarian, into informal services. The industrialization process has been quite slow. From a development perspective, what do you think is the missing element in our industrialization agenda, in particular of Uganda, and how can we use the best practices to get our agenda to another level using this industrial policy?
Okay. Thank you, moderator. Let me also join other panel member conveying our sincere, heartful congratulations to the minister and the ministries for successful launch of the National Industrial Policy and the implementation plan. Before our answer your particular question, I also wanted to it's really nice music to hear what the minister said like 30 minutes back. It was remarkable to listen some of those very emotionally charged, but at the same time, very, very strategic response. I was really impressed. The minister in a brief speech highlighted some of the points which I myself wanted to